Victor Moreno had never been a man driven by impulse. At 30, he had established a solid career in business, making meticulously calculated decisions that earned him a reputation as one of the city's most promising entrepreneurs. But as he stepped through the heavy doors of the auction hall that evening, he already sensed that something was about to slip from his grasp. The entire venue, nestled in a luxurious district, was a place where power and wealth dictated the rules. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, and the walls were adorned with artwork so valuable that they could likely purchase small islands. The attendees, seated in the velvet chairs, wore attire that exuded exclusivity, their whispers forming a backdrop to the spectacle of extravagant consumption. Victor hadn't come by choice. A friend had insisted he attend, promising that investing in something unique would be a transformative experience. Reluctantly, he had agreed, but with every lot announced, ranging from rare jewels to exotic animals, he felt increasingly uneasy. This was not the type of business he wished to be involved in. And now, ladies and gentlemen, something truly unique, straight from the stars. The auctioneer's voice boomed, capturing everyone's attention. Victor, distracted, was looking at his phone when the stage lights shifted, revealing the next item. The atmosphere in the room seemed to change, a murmur rippling through the crowd. When Victor looked up, the sight left him speechless. A female figure stood at the center of the stage, her delicate wrists bound to metal supports. Her skin was a shimmering shade of blue, almost mesmerizing, reflecting the lights around her like a living gem. Long, silvery white hair cascaded down to her waist, and her violet eyes glowed with a mixture of fear and dignity. "Presenting to you, Ira," the auctioneer continued, wearing a triumphant smile, "a true interstellar jewel, a one-of-a-kind specimen from an unexplored star system." Victor felt his stomach twist. Outrage hit him like a punch. How could they treat a living being as merchandise? He looked around, searching for any sign of protest, but all he saw were greedy gazes and hushed excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's start the bidding at $500,000. The numbers began climbing rapidly. With each bid, Victor's heartbeat grew louder. He should leave. This wasn't his issue, but when he looked at Ira again, he saw something in her eyes. A silent, almost imperceptible plea that shattered any resistance he might have had. Without thinking, he raised his hand. 1 million! The entire hall fell silent for a moment. Victor felt all eyes on him, but he held his posture firm. "We have a bid of 1 million! The auctioneer exclaimed, clearly thrilled. "Any takers?" The silence was enough for the gavel to fall with a decisive thud. "Sold!" Victor barely registered the moment. He was directed to collect his purchase backstage. Everything felt surreal. When he finally saw her up close, Ira's expression was a mix of distrust and curiosity. "What are you going to do with me?" she asked, her voice low but clear, carrying a subtle accent that made her words even more intriguing. Victor took a deep breath. "I bought you to set you free." On the drive home, the silence in the car was broken only by the hum of the engine. Naira sat in the back seat, her wide eyes absorbing every detail of the world outside. Victor watched her through the rearview mirror, still trying to process what he had done. "You said you're going to set me free," she finally spoke, her voice breaking the quiet. "What does that mean?" "It means you won't belong to anyone, that you can live however you want." She frowned, clearly grappling with the concept. "I don't know what that's like." Victor felt a pang in his chest. He didn't know what she had endured before being auctioned, but it was evident that her life had never truly been her own. "You'll learn," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. She studied him through the rearview mirror, her gaze intense. "Victor, is that your name?" she asked, savoring the sound of it. He nodded, surprised she already knew. "I don't understand you humans. You seem so unpredictable." Victor didn't respond, but the comment lingered in his mind. Back at the apartment, Victor tried to make Ira's arrival as comfortable as possible. He led her into the spacious modern living room and offered her more suitable clothing. She accepted with a curious smile but hesitated as she touched the fabric. "It's soft," she said, running her fingers over the material. He nodded, feeling strangely captivated by the way she reacted to the simplest things. "You can explore. Make yourself at home." Ira wandered through the space, her light footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. She seemed enchanted by every object she encountered, from the minimalist furniture to the electronic devices. When she pressed a button on a lamp and the light turned on, she jumped slightly before laughing. "That's amazing!" Victor laughed with her, feeling a lightness he hadn't expected. But as the evening wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Sitting on the couch, Ira studied him with a serene but curious expression. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Victor hesitated. He didn't have a simple answer. Part of him wanted to believe it was just the right thing to do, but the truth was more complicated. "I couldn't leave you there," he finally said. She tilted her head, her gaze probing. "Humans are strange, but I like you. I want to understand you." Her tone was innocent, but there was something in her eyes that made Victor's skin prickle. He looked away, feeling a warmth spread through him that he couldn't explain. "Tomorrow I'll show you more of our world," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. She smiled, and her smile seemed to brighten the entire room. Victor went to bed that night, but sleep was impossible. Something had begun between them, something deep, intense, and uncontrollable. As he stared at the ceiling, he knew his life was changing in ways he couldn't yet understand, and he had no idea where it would lead. The morning began with soft sunlight streaming through the large windows of Victor's apartment, casting a gentle glow over the space. Standing in front of the panoramic window, Ira gazed at the sky, her silver-white hair glimmering in the light. Her expression was a mix of wonder and sadness, as though she were contemplating a distant memory. Victor was in the kitchen preparing coffee, having woken early only to discover that Ira was already awake, silently exploring the space. Even after just a single night of living with her, he knew there was something extraordinary about her. She wasn't just otherworldly in appearance. There was a magnetic quality about her that captivated him entirely. "You're up early," he remarked, his voice soft to avoid startling her. "I didn't need much sleep," Ira replied, her voice calm and melodic. "My body, it's different from yours." Victor raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Different how?" She shrugged lightly. "I'm not sure how to explain it. I just know I feel less need for rest. But that doesn't mean I didn't appreciate the comfort of the bed. It was better than anything I've experienced before." There was something in the way she said it, something deeper than her words suggested. Victor approached her, handing her a steaming mug of coffee. "Try this," he offered. She took it with curiosity, bringing the cup to her lips. At the first sip, her expression shifted to one of surprise and mild confusion. "It's bitter," she said, frowning slightly but immediately taking another sip. Victor chuckled. "It's an acquired taste." "Humans seem to like complicated things," she remarked, shaking her head lightly. Victor laughed again, feeling a strange lightness in her presence. But as she stared thoughtfully at the mug, he noticed a lingering sadness in her eyes. "Ira," he began hesitantly, "do you want to tell me how you ended up at the auction?" Her violet eyes met his, and for a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she placed the mug on the counter and crossed her arms as though bracing herself. "I'm not from here," she began, her voice quieter now. "My people are peaceful. We're explorers. We travel to learn, to understand other worlds and cultures." Victor nodded, silently encouraging her to continue. "When I was chosen to come to Earth, it was supposed to be as part of a cultural exchange. An intergalactic agency presented itself as a mediator. They told me I'd learn about you, live among humans." She paused, her voice wavering slightly. "But that's not what happened. The agency sold me. They handed me over to men who locked me up and treated me as a thing." Victor felt his chest tighten, anger boiling under his skin. "The men from the auction? They hurt you?" Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't let them fall. "They were cruel. Not physically most of the time, but they treated me like I wasn't a person anymore. Like I was just a possession to be used, displayed, shown off. It was worse than physical pain. It was as if I'd stopped existing." Victor was silent, his chest heavy with a mix of rage and helplessness. He wanted to say something, but no words felt adequate. "You're safe now," he said finally, his voice low but firm. She gave him a small, melancholic smile. "Maybe, but I still feel lost." Victor stepped closer, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll fix that, I promise. Later that day, Victor decided to take Ira out of the apartment. She needed to see more of the world, to experience what Earth truly had to offer beyond the darkness she had endured. Dressed in simple clothes he had bought to help her blend in, she looked almost human, though still stunningly beautiful. As they strolled through a nearby park, Ira was captivated by everything around her. Why do the trees look so alive? She asked, running her fingers over a leaf. Victor smiled. They are alive. They're part of our ecosystem. She turned to him, her face lit with curiosity. Your world is beautiful. Even after everything, I still think that. Her comment struck a chord in Victor, and he realized how resilient she was despite everything she had been through. They continued their walk, and he brought her to a nearby cafe. Ira tried a piece of chocolate cake, her eyes lighting up with delight. This is wonderful! Better than coffee, Victor teased. She laughed, and the sound was like music. As they ate, Ira asked him questions. Why do humans live this way? Always rushing, always so disconnected. Victor thought for a moment before answering. I guess it's just how the world works. Everyone is trying to survive, to reach something, but it wasn't always like this. She studied him, her violet eyes filled with curiosity. And you, Victor? What are you trying to reach? The question caught him off guard. He opened his mouth to answer, but she placed a gentle finger on his lips. Don't say anything, she whispered. You always think too much. She pulled her hand away, but she didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on his, and Victor felt the air between them grow heavy. For a moment, he thought she might step back. But Ira remained close. So close he could feel her warmth. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out, her fingers brushing softly along his jawline. You're so different from the other humans I've met, she said, her voice low. Am I? He asked, trying to sound casual. But his voice came out rough, a smile that made his heart race. Yes, you make me feel things. Victor swallowed hard. Things? She nodded, leaning in just slightly. Things I can't explain, but they're good. For a moment, Victor thought she might kiss him. The world seemed to slow, leaving only the two of them in that charged moment. But then she smiled again and stepped back, leaving him breathless and wanting more. Later that night, Victor stepped onto the balcony to get some fresh air. He needed to clear his mind, to process what was happening between them. But to his surprise, he found Ira already there, gazing at the stars. I knew I'd find you here, she said without turning. I needed some time to think. She smiled, finally looking at him. You always need time to think. He chuckled, shaking his head. Maybe it's a bad habit. Ira took a step toward him and then another, and she stopped. She was so close he could feel the faint scent of her skin. Something uniquely hers that made him lose focus. Victor, she began softly. I've never felt this before, this connection. He looked at her, and for a moment, all his doubts vanished. I haven't either. Naira tilted her head, her eyes shimmering with something he couldn't name. Then why are we fighting it? Before he could answer, she made the first move. Naira cupped his face in her hands and kissed him. It was soft at first, exploratory, but it quickly deepened, becoming something fierce and consuming. Victor responded, pulling her closer, feeling the warmth of her body against his. The world disappeared, leaving only the two of them in that moment. That kiss, when they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. That was unexpected, he said with a smile. Ira laughed softly, her hand still on his face. For me too, but I don't regret it. Victor grinned, pulling her back into his arms. Neither do I. Under the stars, something shifted between them that night. There were no more barriers, no more doubts, only the two of them. And for now, that was all that mattered. The weeks that followed were like a dream. Victor and Ira became inseparable. their connection deepening with every shared moment. The world seemed to shrink, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of happiness. Yet in the quiet moments, Victor would catch Ira gazing at the stars through the apartment window, a mixture of longing and uncertainty in her violet eyes. One night, as Victor watched her from across the room, something stirred within him. He knew the time had come to confront the unspoken questions hanging between them. Here, he approached her slowly, stopping by her side at the window. "Thinking about your world?" he asked, his voice soft. Ira sighed, her gaze still fixed on the sky. "Sometimes, but not the way I used to." "What do you mean?" He turned to look at her, his eyes shimmering with emotion he couldn't quite decipher. "Before, I thought of my planet as the only place I could ever belong. Now I'm not so sure." Victor's heart raced. He reached out and took her hand, their fingers intertwining effortlessly. "You'll always have a place here, Ira, with me." She smiled gently, but there was still a trace of sadness in her expression. "And what if one day I can't stay?" The next morning, Ira seemed quieter than usual as Victor prepared coffee. She walked into the kitchen wearing one of his oversized shirts, her silver hair tousled. Despite her casual appearance, there was a serious look on her face. "We need to talk," she said bluntly. Victor set down the cup he was filling and turned to her, his chest tightening. "Of course. What is it?" Ira hesitated, biting her lower lip before continuing. "About what happens now. Melius. My place here." Victor frowned, sensing the weight of her words. "Your place is here with me, Ira. I thought we'd already settled that." She shook her head, crossing her arms as though bracing herself. "Victor, I love being here. I love being with you. But you know I'm not like you. I don't completely belong to this world." Victor stepped closer, holding her shoulders gently. "That doesn't matter to me. I don't care where you came from, Ira. What matters is where you are now." She looked up at him, her gaze filled with love and warmth. "And what if one day I can't stay?" The silence that followed was heavy, and Victor realized she was serious. The next day, Victor woke to the sound of a faint beeping. When he went to investigate, he found Ira sitting in the living room, holding a small, glowing device. "What is that?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "It's a communicator from my people," she explained. "I've kept it hidden since the auction. I couldn't bear to use it, but now it's active. They're calling me." Victor felt his stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means they're searching for me. They've found me." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "It's an invitation to return, but also a chance to decide." Victor stepped closer, his pulse racing. "So you have a choice?" Ira nodded, looking down at the communicator. "They want me to come back to teach what I've learned here. But maybe there's another way." "What way?" "Crew." She looked up at him, her expression both hopeful and uncertain. "I could ask to stay. But if I do, it means cutting ties with my world forever." Victor's chest tightened at the thought. "I don't want you to lose who you are, Ira, but if staying is what you truly want, I'll support you." Her eyes searched his, and after a long moment, a soft smile spread across her lips. "Victor, my connection to who I am is you." That night, Ira made her choice. She deactivated the communicator, its glowing light fading into silence. Months later, the two of them stood together on the apartment balcony, looking up at the stars as they often did. But this time, something was different. Ira wore a silver ring on her finger, a symbol of their unbreakable bond. "Do you still miss your world?" Victor asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "No," she replied, leaning back into him with a soft smile. "Because I found my home here with you." They smiled at each other, and under the vast expanse of the stars, they had found something that transcended worlds. A love that would never be bound by borders. The weeks that followed felt like a dream. Victor and Ira's connection deepened with every passing day, and it was clear there was no turning back. They had found something rare and beautiful, a bond that neither time nor circumstance could break. But even amidst their happiness, Ira's gaze would often drift toward the stars, as though wondering if she had made the right choice. One evening, as they sat together, Victor noticed the distant look in her eyes. He gently placed a hand over hers. "Ira, is something on your mind?" he asked softly. She turned to him, her violet eyes shimmering with emotion. "Not exactly," she said with a small smile, but the way her voice faltered betrayed a lingering unease. Victor studied her face, his brow furrowed with concern. "Talk to me," he urged gently. Ira hesitated, then let out a deep sigh. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice," she admitted. Her voice softened. "Leaving my world behind, it wasn't easy. I had to say goodbye to everything I knew, my family, my people." Victor's chest tightened as he listened, tightening his hold on her hand, pulling her closer. "You did what you needed to do," he said, his voice steady, "and you made the right choice, because you're here with me." She looked up at him, her gaze filled with love and warmth. "And what if one day I can't stay?" The silence that followed was heavy, and Victor realized she was serious. "That's not going to happen. We'll figure out a way to be together. Always." Her eyes searched his, and after a long moment, a soft smile spread across her lips. "Victor, my connection to who I am is you." That night, Ira made her choice. She deactivated the communicator, its glowing light fading into silence. Months later, the two of them stood together on the apartment balcony, looking up at the stars, as they often did. But this time, something was different. Ira wore a silver ring on her finger, a symbol of their unbreakable bond. "Do you still miss your world?" Victor asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "No," she replied, leaning back into him with a soft smile, "because I found my home here, with you." They smiled at each other, and under the vast expanse of the stars, they had found something that transcended worlds, a love that would never be bound by borders.